Okay, let's kick this off with a little bit of guitar and let's see what happens. Yep, that will do. 1 second, I'm gonna have to do something. It won't be much more than a second. Yes, I'm courting controversy as usual on the internet. And, I don't know. It's just, I'm looking at some of the posts I just read. Yeah, I'm starting something with whatchamacallit, some people who seem to have done me no harm. And it's just so interesting that, you know, that seems to be a understanding that I'm really hoping to end not not with just one recording. It's gonna take some time to get there. But basically, the reality is it does me some harm. There are a lot of public goods that we need left intact. Security, silence, um, let's say a certain amount of freedom, freedom of thought, for example. People don't usually want to stop you and ask questions like, what are you thinking at this particular moment? But in some places, they could. Like if you're walking around a certain military installation, they can ask you, "What are you doing here?" They can't ask you that if you're like outside a store in a busy shopping area. Um, Apparently, some parts of America or Europe or wherever you find the mafia might suggest you avoid certain parts of town because they might ask you where you're from. I think of like Los Angeles, particularly the areas that a person like Vince Staples or Tupac Shakur did some growing up around. Apparently, or Kendrick Lamar, he has a skit in which he's saying that, yeah, like, I'm going to ask you where your daddy from, where your mama from, where your grandma stay. And in fact, get out of the car before I snatch you out. And yeah, like the idea they can run up on your car and like ask you like where you're from. If you don't mention a place that like they recognize or, you know, back up the fact that you're a part of the neighborhood and you're not some sort of a spy or a sneak, they might get harmed. They might steal your car, they might, beat you up. Anything can happen. So, the idea that like some places you're not allowed to have certain thoughts or your freedom is curtailed because a public good has not been secured by those of us who work for public goods. That's sort of where I am right now. I'm working for a public good called internet sobriety. People are not posting soberly on the internet, and you say, okay, what business is it of mine? I don't have to know the answer to that quite yet. All I know is that you're not supposed to be doing what you're doing, and I have a right to tell you to stop in a way in which I know will get the stopping to happen. I'm an expert at this. Your mileage may vary. If you know you should be doing this, please get on and do it. If you know you shouldn't be doing it, then stand back and watch the experts get the situation sorted. In my case, I was looking at some soccer players. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the soccer players, but basically, the idea that, a person makes a living in a sport is pretty ridiculous. Like I was saying, if you score like 300 goals, 400 goals, 500 goals, however many, there's no number you can score that'll basically impress me, unless you think I'm into the statistics the way you are, right? And once I am into the statistics, what am I going to say except you have managed to, surprise us? Oh, yes? Yeah, this is an announcement that I'm going to be picked up for dinner, so that's good. I get to eat something other than that crap. And yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so back to the soccer players, right? So, yeah, I managed to like mute half of that throat clearing. So, if it just seems like I won't be interested to hear in the future, like let's say you could give me information from the future, would I be interested to hear, okay, who scored 1,000 goals? like in the course of a career, as opposed to 500 or 300, 200 or 100. Would I be interested to hear about the guy who at the very beginning of the sport might maybe scored 50 goals, but like he was the first one to like, take the sport seriously enough to inspire others to, make goal scoring like the main thing to be trying for? Like if you don't have a mature idea of like what you're looking for when you hear a number, then just, this guy has $1,000. Well, that used to be a whole lot of money back in the day. This guy has like, 10 pounds sterling. Well, 10 pounds of sterling silver is a lot of money today. But back in the day, like, I, you can just sort of see how inflation has, eroded the value of the pound sterling. 1 pound sterling is like enough to buy like a Coca Cola or something. But a pound, which is like half a kilogram of silver, is a lot of money. It's like in the thousands, I think, at least several hundreds. I don't follow the silver market enough to know these prices off the top of my head. That I do wish I knew because I'm trying to understand the world. So if I want to understand football and I want to look at these numbers and say, okay, these are like the numbers that have been achieved over the past 1,000 years of playing the sport, and I can put in perspective what was a hardworking or less hardworking time in the game. Okay, cool. Like I now know who scored the most. Would I earn my respect? A certain amount. I mean, you're doing better as a worker in that particular industry than somebody who doesn't score at all or is always on the bench. In theory, right? There's no absolute you can basically make in life without asking for all the information you possibly can. You can't just get like, a sentence or two and say that's enough to make any absolute judgment. You want to basically get all the information they're offering you. So in this kind of way, you can just see that I'm not particularly impressed with the idea that Messi and Ronaldo are competing for who scored the most goals over the course of their career. Apart from the fact that I've also seen both their play styles, and I watched the video in which Messi was basically, humiliating defenders. And yeah, I made a joke about it, like he's, if he sort of, humiliate four defenders and pass the ball to the goalkeeper, because that's what he would essentially end up doing if you just simply keep fighting defenders until you're basically almost at the end of the field, about crossing the goal line, or like the goal field line, whatever they call it in the sport, and yeah, like getting offside or whatever, or getting like a corner kick or something, or giving you know what I mean. Anyway, so before you sort of crash out of the bounds of the court, you pass the ball or attempt to score at an extremely awkward angle, and just basically make it impossible to actually get a point for your team. Then yeah, you're gonna see that's really pointless. You basically gave people a bit of a show from the stands. With this, if the game is to basically score the goal, you wouldn't have been able to. It was just a really awkward shot. You would know that if you're being realistic, but you just want to basically prove that you're the star or whatever the case might be. You can basically dribble anybody at all. You're some sort of attraction, some sort of a show, for people who want to see like pyrotechnics or juggling with the feet or what they call it, and they come to watch that kind of stuff, instead of watching a sport. Then yeah, I suppose that's interesting for those people who come to watch for that reason. I'm not one of them. You shouldn't be one of them either if you believe in me, right? Then suppose that there's also like wonderful scoring opportunities. Like he scored a lot. He scored a lot. He scored. They passed him. He scored. He passed to someone. They scored. Like that's not the real idea of a sport. The idea of a sport is to have fun. I don't want to spend the whole time on this particular topic, but it just seems the case that people seem to have lost their way. It just seems like scoring goals and betting on results and predictability of like and minimizing risk on bets, and of course highlight reels that you keep on producing and putting on the TVs and the mobile phones that make you amazing to people who can't do what you do. Everybody should be able to say there's one thing that I can do that most people can't. At this point, most people will say I can talk really well, I can write really well, I can code really well. I don't know. I don't want to sound, dismissive of what I spend a lot of time trying to acquire as talents, but mostly I'm making music, and most of my instrument's the piano at this point. I spend a lot of time and effort trying to become a good piano player, and I haven't had the chance to, show what I can do, which is unique to me and no one else. If you play a lot of piano, and you might have heard people like Thelonious Monk, he has a different style to someone like Duke Ellington or Errol Garner or, Bill Evans or Teddy Wilson. These are all pianists with very unique styles and very unique sounds. You will not mistake one for the other. Brad Miller has his own unique sound, but it sort of sounds in some cases a bit modern. Like if you want to sound modern and a little like, you know, bebop, there's a certain kind of like glitter, like I don't know, almost like you're walking into like a string, bead, door, doorway, into like some sort of a house. Like you sort of hit the beads, and they don't exactly make. It's not like wind chimes per se, but it's almost like you're hitting like wind chimes in the form of beads, and it's sort of like hits a bit, hits a bit, hits a bit, hits a bit. Like there's no sort of like melody you're trying to like outline. You're just trying to basically like create a certain kind of like shimmer. He does it a lot. You've heard other people do it too, so it makes it kind of hard to differentiate his style from other people you've heard before. Other things to his style make it kind of hard to pick him out of, let's say, a lineup of musical styles of pianists. But I like his style. He's someone I listen to for inspiration in music. But other people I mentioned are kind of more iconic when it comes to like the sort of sound they produce in the piano. You just know, yep, that's Thelonious Monk for sure. That's Bill Evans probably, you know, so on and so forth. I'm looking for that kind of style too, and it's something that comes to you pretty quickly. You don't have to worry too much about like having like the fast runs or like the loud sound. Like Ahmad Jamal has a certain kind of sound that's pretty recognizable. He's always in a gay mood. He's not really like feeling soulful and introspective like Bill Evans might. Anyway, that's what I'm looking for. All right. So it looks like, I look at a person who's just simply scoring goals. And I'm like, okay, what's your unique style? Well, is this my number? No, you have a way of playing, which I hope you can basically, teach the next generation if it's valuable. But for a guy who just simply goes into like, the opponent's half of the court or field and just starts, embarrassing defenders, and the ball is like chained to him. Like, is this like a ball and chain attached to his ankle? He just managed to keep the ball with him at all times. Eventually, he just sort of snaps the chain, kicks the ball into the goal, and that's it. It's not supposed to be fun to be playing with him. If it looks like you play chess and you have someone who just wipes you off the board, and then before you could even castle, shakes your hand and says "good game." Like, do you want to play with him again? Like the idea that this sort of idea of wanting to play with someone again, thinking it was fun to be with another person. The thing is, these experiences are so far away from movies and media and our personal lives in general, that if you didn't know it was real, you'd think I'm just making it up and like being funny, and sentimental about what can actually exist. Well, it just seems like you're spending time with me. You get a sense of what it's like if I'm not talking about you in a critical way, and we're just actually enjoying, hopefully, a moment, you know, which doesn't, polarize people. Like, for example, right now I'm talking to a lot of soccer players who listen to me right now, and that I can be a fun person to talk to if I wasn't criticizing the game and trying to get it to a right place. A lot of people in the army are listening to me too. They know that literally we have a lot of changes to make about how we see people, how we see the act of defense and even offense. And we need to get the sense that literally, just like soccer games, it looks like you could have said I had fun fighting the Vietnam War. A lot of times you might have heard in BBC, shows or TV, moments on YouTube, a guy, say he went back to Vietnam after the war and ended up going to a bar or some such thing, drinking with someone who seemed about his age. They ended up talking about the war. They finally fought on opposing sides. And wow, like they're getting along so well. You didn't know that they literally, the media, both Vietnamese and American, made the enemy sound like a heartless, evil person. It looks like you can simply, achieve that moment of realization that we're all trying to survive, and it was a job, and it so happens that you're an opposing team. I was on, my team, but aside from that, we can get along. Like, that's supposed to happen before the end of a war. At least as the war is starting to come to an end, you can just sort of say, yeah, I guess the better side won. We'll just have to concede with whatever ends up being the losing person's, lot to bear. And yeah, like, they say, yes, is this true that Hassan's trying to suggest something which is kind of possible? War can also be a little less, exactly hateful, you know. Yes. So it just seems like, there's a mature, like heartwarming approach to sports where it looks like winning at all costs is not the way to feel good about the participation in the sports or the game. There is, and believe in it. If it just seemed like you're playing against me and I basically beat you or whatever you call beating. I mean, I don't want to beat people. I just want to win. If winning is simply having an educational experience with somebody, I get that everywhere I go. So you play basketball with me, you play soccer with me, you'll learn something if you're interested in learning. If you're not, and you just want to simply achieve a certain kind of certification. Yeah, you got so many points over me, and you're therefore a better player than I am. I think that's nonsense, and try and insist that's what happened because you beat me. Whether it's a class that you thought you got a higher score than I did. I know people who did that to me. Whether you think that yeah, even at Stanford, people were going through the papers looking for my results. You know, and try to say, yeah, he's not that great at this class. I could just sort of feel the energy when I got my paper from the cubby hole in the professor's or lecturer's lounge, you know? And see all the other scores higher than mine. They're actually not real. You see. It's basically to keep people from being too interested in me because literally I was a huge sensation at Stanford. Everyone assumed I was really rich but didn't want to talk about it. Yes, that's still true. I am really rich, just that the money is being used to save the planet. I basically have bought all the debts, and I'm trying to make this whole planet profitable. Until it's profitable, I'm kind of like working kind of in debt. You might see me with a lot of money to spend on investing in businesses and I might be wearing fancy clothes and jewelry, but to my mind, until the whole planet is profitable, I'm not. I'm still in the red. I don't have a spare dime for anything except you know what I can assume as, let's say, fun. I can't be be pitying people until the planet is okay and I can simply assume pity is a kind of fun I can do. Up till then, I need everyone working as if they're sharing the same debt I am, but they actually are. They were supposed to have worked and not made this whole thing just so criminally funny. They're supposed to be working validly. So, like, yeah, apart from the fact I see, Messi, dragging the ball around him like it's tied to his ankle. I see Ronaldo kicking balls from the halfway line, scoring goals that way. And it looks like, yeah, you have these two different styles of players. The goal of soccer is basically get people into playing the game themselves. Like, literally, I saw this guy play, I want to play like him. Do you want people to just simply be rocketing balls, from distances or never losing the ball to a defender? And never passing for that matter? Is that what you want the future to look like of soccer? Just because the numbers are going up and up and up and up and up, the economy is looking the same way to me. You see what I mean? The profit numbers, the revenue numbers. You went from like a $1 million company to $10 million to $100 million to $1 billion. Like, what number are you going to get happy with? Like, does it even matter? Do you care like what it takes to cost a company that kind of cash? And are all companies using the right kind of strategies, the right kind of algorithms to basically win that kind of number from the fixed amount of money that's sloshing around in the economy as free cash that people would spend and on what do you call non-necessary items? Mostly, yeah. As for the utilities like lands or security and water and electricity, they're almost all free. Water costs a whole lot more than people are paying for it right now. We didn't have to basically turn on the system so water costs exactly what it should cost. It's very expensive. It's going to cost as much as wine. Honestly, that's sort of the right cost of money. Water costs as much as wine. You're not supposed to be showering every day if you don't have the money to afford it. Anyway, yeah, I'll just put that down. hmm So anyway, yes. Let's say 0 to the soccer Messi versus Ronaldo problem. Anyway, so if it looks like I can give a more comprehensive explanation of my feelings because I feel like I need to, calm people down and make sure they don't think I'm some sort of a criminal brute who just has an astounding ability to make anyone seem funny. Everyone should appreciate by basically thinking it over. I'm trying to improve the system. We don't need people beating each other. Every time you score a goal, everyone in the opposing team's hearts just simply goes to the floor. They're all hurt, and trying to hide, how scared they are of the results coming their way. You know, they score against you. Ah, now it's your turn. You know, while you're scoring them, you're going off to run to the corner pole, do your fancy dance, slide, with your knees, over the grass, and you get hugged and jumped on by your teammates. Is there any thought for the people who just, did their best? If they weren't playing well, that's what you basically can argue about. They weren't playing well. You had to basically show them how to, take the game a little more seriously. But I see everyone working really hard to basically try and keep food on their table. But everyone just simply scores a goal before, everyone's celebrating. The stands are going crazy. They're waving their flags. The scarves are, wafting in the wind. And is this who we are as a humanity? Like, just so happy when someone loses. Because like there are other kinds of wins that you can get when no one has to lose. I already mentioned one. I won't mention any more than that. But it really is possible for two people to win at the same time. It really is possible for one person to win without making someone else lose. When you produce value, for example, one person wins, maybe another person didn't create that value, but it's not so much that the value that person's created comes at the expense of the other person. You see? So yeah, if this seems like we need to move into that kind of producing value as opposed to taking things from other people. I took from you, now it's mine. It happens in trading. It happens, in stock trading and all kinds of other trading too. It happens in sports. It happens in competitions of all kinds. So we need to move away from that. And if it's like people understand, I'm not trying to like just have fun making anyone who's less smart than me, like, pay the penalty for not having chosen books as a career. I know what it's like to run. If you read my post, you can see I know what it's like to run and feel the pain of exercise beyond your natural limits, just to basically change the shape of your body. Yeah, I have a look. I'm pretty fleshy now, but I used to look pretty thin. My LinkedIn photograph is of me still looking thin. If you want to check me out that way, I don't recommend it though. Yeah, it's pretty painful to look at. I was really close to a certain kind of death, And considering a lot of people who knew me from the start, I was a little bit fleshier than that, but not much fleshier. Now I'm a little bit healthier, but they all insist I should continue to lose weight and look like the way I used to. That's what they preferred me looking at. So yeah, I mean, once again, that's not my point to talk about. I want to talk about family, which is kind of related to this. But yes, like people need to realize that it's important to remember that your father wants you to do something better than this for a living. Taking balls from people and scoring goals with the balls he's taken. Like, that's not a man's life at all. I hope that's been clear. Anyway, so on to the topic of family, but I just want to make it clear I'm not trying to embarrass people because I think it's fun to embarrass people. People who did the wrong thing need to learn the hard way. And also, like I said, there's a public good, at stake. Whether you think I need the sport of soccer personally or I don't, or it wouldn't matter if I didn't play soccer myself. If I just see someone doing the wrong thing, it's my responsibility as a man to make sure that the people who aren't on the path to becoming men, you know, are frightened of doing the same thing again. In my case, I'm using shame and public ridicule to do it. You guys will all say that, yeah, better than using sticks and whips, and that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, I don't agree. You actually would have taken a whipping and a bit of a small talk rather than some sort of public explanation of what you did that was wrong in some sort of public way. That's going to be lasting forever in people's minds. I don't feel any of your pain. I don't expect to. I shouldn't have to. You're making mistakes when you decide to choose this kind of life for a living. And I made it also pretty clear that some people know about the pain that they cause and the pain they have to take to cause pain, but you know what they're fighting for. If you don't know what you're fighting for, you just stay out of the game. Yeah. And of course, these people are not making any money at all. The investors are. The people who basically, pay all sorts of money to, put them in all sorts of places. It takes money. It's not just simply this guy shows up. He has to get kits. That has to be part of a team, which takes a certain money to maintain. The team bus, the team airplane flights. These are all things he doesn't have to pay for himself. He never will have to. Because if he wouldn't have had the money to certainly put that money up front. And then, yeah, like, say he's going to take a revenue from, like, the ticket sales and the sales of media to the media. and literally, there's not much money being made from ticket sales. I mean, how many stadiums can you basically fill and take the like 10%, even if it's 10% of the ticket price, to say you're going to afford plane flights for the whole team? To go from England, England's an island, so of course you want to play in Spain for Champions League or Germany for Champions League, you have to take a plane. You think one plane, you can make enough for a plane flight of soccer players on ticket sales, either in Spain or in England? you know? They're all in loss. They're taking losses to basically put you people in these sort of privileged positions to basically score and do sue or whatever it is. You know, like I'm saying once again, it's a public resource. He said he's very embarrassed to have to basically celebrate Sue every time he wins a goal because it's something they all expected him to do. Understood, but now is not the time to feel sorry about this. You didn't have the courage to take quitting because literally, if I simply said, quit, before I write this or I write this, you wouldn't have the courage to quit before I wrote it. So therefore, you don't have the courage to basically do the right thing and move on to the path you need to be on. Which is not basically making a spectacle of yourself every time you score, where it's a meaningless goal. Out of one of 400 goals, you do this sort of spectacle, and the more spectacles you do, the better you're doing as an athlete. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not a man's job. It's not even a boy's job. You know. And yeah, Messi says the same thing is true. He doesn't understand English very very well. And like Hassan's been saying, you can't basically be a Spanish language millionaire in a world in which millionaire is basically reserved for United States citizens. It's $1 million people want, not €1 million or £1 million. It's always been $1 million. Whereas America, a country that speaks English, in which I expect you to be able to describe, if nothing else, the person on the $1 bill. As in, what is his hair like? Can you basically convince me you know something about him from describing him to another person? If you don't have enough English for that, you have no reason to basically be a part of the experiment. The experiment of giving people, pictures of presidents, as a way to hopefully make them feel something about the life of public service that allows you to basically enjoy, the miracle of American business that works across all 50 states. The 50 states are required to create companies like Nike or IBM or Microsoft or Tesla, there are a few companies, right? But of course, the whole system runs on the American dollar, but it's all English language. If you don't have English language to basically appreciate the presidents who all did their business in English and understand why English has a certain kind of power that France didn't have at the time. But yet, a lot of people came from France to America to help them fight the Revolutionary War. Yes, I read in National Geographic. There's a National Geographic in a place I don't want to talk about, but they're talking about France. Like France is like 200th an anniversary since some important dates, and they're saying that back in the day, some rich guy called Lafayette came to America to basically work, and he was making a lot of money in France, but he came to America to make pretty much nothing. And as a result of his work in the war as some sort of a general, a soldier, or a spy, or whatever, more streets in America are named Lafayette than any other person. There are more Lafayette Avenues, Lafayette Streets, Lafayette Lanes than any other name in America. You see. So America's an international product. We all said English, English, English. Now it looks like, there's a certain kind of like if I can't really expect you to explain English that well, then it's just hard to talk about what I will say to you because it'll be very hard for you to hear this, you know. But you're not black enough to really be an American. I don't really see the influence of black culture in your life. You don't listen to our music, you don't eat our food. I'm not saying you have to because we don't like you if you don't. But you spent a long time in Miami, a long time in America, and a long time enjoying what our music, black people music, has done for the English language. A lot of people learn English because they're trying to sing our songs. You don't want to try that? Why can't you? And to see this sort of idea of Europe, separate from American culture, American music, American movies, still trying to succeed where only American ideas can. You have to be a certain kind of friendly, hi, welcome to Wendy's. Can I take your order? That kind of culture is what makes a business successful as a restaurant chain. If you don't have that kind of manners, which comes from a certain kind of interest in good times and good weather and people, who are athletic even, who are friendly and jovial. They joke a bit. We joke a lot in our movies. We make comedies. No other country in the world makes comedies as movies. So you don't know how to joke as an American or joke as a person in English. But you think you're doing that in another language? A joke that's friendly and everyone can understand? It's not us versus them kind of jokes. Yeah, you want to understand what makes American business successful all around the world. And so you're kind of losing a lot of your life here, but this is how it is to teach you what you need to know because you don't know these things at all. So yeah, I hope I've been pretty clear about the need to be a bit more black about your life, because the black culture, which made this, yes sir, yes ma'am, that's all black culture. You can read a number of books written in the 50s and even earlier than that, which let you know how slave people used to behave to their masters. The idea that we had a lot of slave anger, you know, but didn't end up creating some sort of a revolution in America that was like, violent towards white people. That kind of patience that one day you'll understand what we went through and apologize fully for calling us strange names and that we're silly, we're stupid, we're interested in sex too much. Like the fact that I'm a black man and the black man has managed to convince the world that the smartest person in the world is actually black, and therefore there's more where I came from, and therefore history must have tried to cover me up the same way you don't hear me in the news, in the media, in the television. I have to basically hide myself on the internet and let you read for yourself what I'm like, how I can sound like. A lot of people are very shocked that I was black. People didn't even believe I was black for a long while. I had to show you videos of me dancing and me talking and me doing these recordings, so you can see the recordings voice is similar to the video voice. You honestly thought I was a joke here, but all that. Anyway, I said enough, and these people are actually really hurt. So I had to basically give some time for them to reflect on their racism. And of course, you see how racist soccer is. I won't even talk much about that. But yeah, it's science time now. Uh, I'm drinking tea while I'm waiting for you guys to gather yourselves. Tea so you can talk a little bit about your family now. Yeah, so I'm about to receive a visit from somebody who claims to be a that to me. And we're going to go out for dinner or something. Maybe it's just the two of us, or I don't know if Timitra is coming too. Yeah, just got explicit, so I'm gonna write that down. And yeah, like I'm a bit relieved about the fact I don't have to rush a program into like life. Programs just take their own time to come 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 alive. Yeah, this one's a bit difficult. It's one of the more difficult programs I've written. I've tried to like reduce the scope of some of the things they wanted me to do. It's not difficult to do. It's just to me I have so many programs to write as the only working programmer for Microsoft, because the idea of Microsoft is in the title of the company, Microsoft. Microsoft, microscopic software. Yep, that was an attack from the spirits. Yeah, the bad ones, the evil ones, yes. So it looks like I'm writing microscopic software that's useful. We have to write a lot of microscopic software to eventually fill in like a richness to the world, which is missing and has always been missing. It's one of those important projects that are very holy and very eternal. It's always been a mission of ours to be able to write a lot of software, like in the millions and billions of programs that certainly assemble into something you can interact with. An operating system is full of billions of programs, really. Now I'm using this operating system that's full of so many programs that like I can't tell you how far you have to work to be able to create something that you can like make programs with. So this is like a program computer made of like a thousand programs. Like we weren't even that, but there's a lot of programs that I'm using to basically make programs. So what I do online, I make these videos. You see them on YouTube. We got like a title screen. I'm using online software, website software that you can basically make on your own Every website can be made by a person at home. So even if you think of a website like, I don't know, Canva, I use quite a bit for some of the art. Yeah, I've can't no not even chose. No, yeah, exactly. Like I'm running low on money. Like every time a month comes by and I have to basically pay like some money for these services, I don't have a whole lot. I have about maybe 3 months left. Basically, yeah, that's what I'll say. Of like money before I run out of program money for my software, which means I'm gonna have to start using the free version of X, and like it'll be a bit inconvenient. I would like to read my stuff in long form. I used to write the shorter ones when I bought the one which I can basically use longer. And yeah, I mean it's hard to do this, but I can't ask for donations. Obviously not. I'm using a very filtered version of the internet. People didn't use that. Realize that. Like the numbers you see on my posts are of course not real. Everyone can confirm that by just me calling their friends and saying, "Yeah, we checked this site and like, you see what he said. Yeah, check it out for yourself." And obviously, if it's just in a few cases, there like 100 views, 200 views on like posts that I know are very popular and full of a lot of impactful information, but like other people just don't seem to want to come back and read my stuff. No, everyone's basically reading my stuff. It's like the new Google.com. Like everyone's reading my ideas and my thoughts, my reactions to people. Yeah, someone who wants to call himself Farouk is going to be able to talk soon about what happened to him when he basically had to lose his last name. Yes. And yeah, he says it's actually a lot better for me now. I call myself something different. But he knows that it's hard to admit that he messed up so badly, he now has to go by a new name. And it's a little bit funny, but it sort of does mean he's going to be looking at choice making. Yes. No, you know who he is. He got a pretty bad one about yesterday or the day before. Yeah, it involves something he left online, full of profanity, especially towards a group of people who don't want to mention their names, but they're holy and ought to be thought of as such. And he got casual about like the use of the bad name. Exactly. Like I said, as God, like don't use my name in vain. We have to understand it applies to everybody else too. Like my name Hassan is just called out so satisfiedly. Hassan, 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 right? And if it looks like you've heard about this guy calling downstairs, for water and for time, like I have the same sort of situation. People call out to me for anything they think they realize that I can't complain about. However, I'm different. I'll definitely put my foot down for some of the things that are going on for sure, you know. But like, and it's hard. You have to sort of look for your moment to sort of mention a person who just can't be stopped. Because that's the thing about people. Unless you have an authority figure they respect, you know, they will continue down their path. Taking the pain that comes from these mistakes they make. It's not hard to imagine that, like, if you simply say my name rudely, and for me to just simply stop this alarm bell going on and on and on and on and on, I have to simply run out as if I'm answering a phone call and get the alarm bell to stop going. You see how interesting electronics is? Yeah. So once I attend to the matter, cool, I go back to my room. But I don't arrive looking like I'm happy to see you. I make it quite clear in my own way I'm here to reduce the number of problems in the world, and I'm not trying to start new ones. But at some point, I do plan to bring up your behavior with you if I'm really allowed to. By and large, I can do it through kind of subtle ways. So I don't have to bother bringing up the person directly. Someone here used to just shout for me so I can come outside to the medication. I'd say, hey, can you please stop shouting my name? He's like, oh, okay, okay. And he stopped doing that. He comes to my door now. You see, it's not easy because people can just simply feel have a right to do anything they want. A right to be, we're all equal, said someone to the King of England. A person who is not groomed even for television, just turn on her whatever camera and just started to complain about their, these fancy royals, this, that. They don't know what they do for a living to afford the lives they have. Whatever they got, they learned from a book published by the royal family themselves about what they do and like how the family works, their challenges and their successes, and their track record over the many hundreds of years they've been around for, and solving certain problems that you may not have heard about. They're still looking to release such a book to the public, but of course, you just read information and be curious and fill in some of the deals yourself. I have information about them which I won't get into too much about, but yes, they work very hard for what they do, and they're also all in debt, trying to keep the system alive. We're all working in many, many different kinds of companies, and both direct and indirect ways, let's put it that way, to make sure that literally England and the English language continues to be the language of, the of planet Earth, basically. So yeah. Anyway, speaking of royal families, I'm a member of a royal family myself, and we're all worked to the bone, trying to make sure that literally Hassan is happy. You see, and yeah, it's a bit a hard one to take, but my father just told me something about my time here. It's about closing, but I still have to do a number of programs. Is wrong. I don't. It's just a bad message that keeps on going on until he shuts it down. You see. Yeah, I was making a point about electronics, which seems kind of satisfying to have finished on, but I can't remember what it was, you know. But yes, you listen to it and recall, and it comes to mind. It said yes, it won't come to mind unless you pause and rewind and listen to it. But it's not too important. It's just to me the idea that yeah, like you know, yeah, like I guess maybe it was a phone idea of having to shut down the phone, and yeah, like eventually, like you get the piece you want. But yeah, this is the thing about programming people. There's many different ways to program a person. You can pray to them sometimes. You can write them a letter and an email, write them a physical letter, give them a gift, which might make them think about you somehow. You can give them a talking to. You sort of ask them questions, that may allow you to basically, there are also tricks you can use to try and get new information to a person. Hopefully, information would change them forever. But people have to be ready to like have a soul, like look into like, if you can go to like a garden and think, new thoughts about people and like, look to a sunrise or a sunset and feel like you got touched somehow. You watch the right kinds of movies or even start to look at the wrong ones, start to think, isn't that funny? Like you enjoy good food, good drink, you get into drugs the right way, like you want to read good books and good music and enjoy good art and make these things yourself. Like if you're that kind of person, it doesn't take much to program you. You just have to be convincing somehow. Just be memorable. And most people have a sense that if you're trying to be memorable, mostly a person at the end will receive that effort. You might even be trying to be memorable, but you end up being so unusual to a person's idea of what is simply normal. You might make a memory you didn't intend to. That's what they call by being sensitive. And I'm a sensitive person, so is my parents. You know, but you always complain about, Hassan, you're too sensitive. Well, the problem is I'm supposed to be. I'm not really meant for this environment where people think just bashing someone else over and over with a certain kind of stick, can get you the right results. It just seems like, yeah, like people think, you just hit a computer over and over and over and eventually it starts working the way you want. Well, yeah, I mean, you want to see brighter lights. You might think you suddenly crack the skin in a certain kind of way. Never that to my machines. You might see a white light instead of a blue. Like, you see what I mean? Like, it just seems the way that people behave that they think if you simply, hit a dog, it'll stop barking, or hit a dog, it'll start barking. Like a sense of simplicity that just is complete haram and shouldn't be around. But everybody wants to be such a program. The world's not working to a taste. I'll adjust it somehow by complaints, by abuse, by hitting. You know, I come to a lot of hitting from my family members, which I don't want to talk too much about until I have answers. Because the thing is, the system, as I already tried to explain, this also, of course, makes it very explicit. You're not really supposed to be hearing about the system if you're not really supposed to. But there's just a certain kind of way that, like, everything comes together, like some sort of a jigsaw puzzle, which is full of a lot of different kinds of pieces that aren't flat alone. There's many different kinds of shapes that also are put together and make a number of things possible, right? It just seems like I'm trying to be scientific about the system, so you don't think I'm being, mystical or, a crackpot of some kind, as they like to say in English. I don't want to say too much about it, but like literally, He's trying to be careful about not looking weird to people. He shouldn't have to worry about that at all. He's supposed to be about as weird as possible, just saying all sorts of things which won't be possible without him. But that's his problem with his family. He needs to basically protect himself from attacks, which his family wants to help him with, but he can't help him entirely until he's finished making recordings like this. So yeah, that's the main problem you have to get into now. You don't have the programs really. You just have to talk more about your feelings. That's a huge relief. Yeah, I have a lot of things to talk about. Yes. Okay. But yeah, I like being rhetorically, complete and tidy. So I can't leave something open, really. I need to sort of explain the system at least a little bit. But just understand that literally the solar system is a very important system, right? And we all need, you know, supplies to produce results, right? And we all need results. Even the results, you know, that we call our supplies for making other people's results gets complicated. It gets complicated very quickly. But a lot of freeloaders around the system, all those bacteria you saw, like in the sea, are doing no good for anybody except eating and dividing. No one eats them. They're not tasty. There are all sorts of animals in the soil, in the forests, in the air, who are not edible and just eat. Useless eaters, to put it that way. However, we need to supply them with stuff because they can all start to panic if a certain amount of that isn't there. And their panicking will cause all sorts of terrible things happening. And they're also bad or mean. So what they need is also a certain amount of Hassan torture. Because once upon a very long time ago, I told them no. And the no was actually painful enough. It was about asking me for sex. I said, no, I won't give you sex. Roughly when it was first invented. Right? So now they understand what happened. They want to say sorry, but a lot of people around the world get the point. I am simply somebody you feel like you should have sex with, but I don't want to give it to you, and that starts to make you angry. Why won't you give it to me? You see? As you can see, I'm open to sharing my words with you. Much like I'm putting my text where you can all read what I say, if we're talking face to face and you're about as reasonable as the screen, could be, which is also sort of funny because I have to filter out all your comments to me. I don't read any of them. They're not visible to me. But that's even as mild as a visible comment could be. If you're actually in my area, like, you'd lynch me. You'd harm me physically. Way too many people to even count. I mean, the 80% of all readers want to harm me physically. 80%. So you see, I'm in a safe place to be able to sort of push a certain kind of agenda through. So by the time you all are looking at me with hatred and murderous intent, my families and all their teams are trying to put certain things in place to make it possible for me and my new family, which I'll be creating with all these girls you see, to be able to live safely. It requires an amount of effort from Hassan to say so, but you're all in big trouble with us. It was just a matter of time before this happened, Hassan wants to say, but it's taken me a lot of years, over 1,000,000 years, of working the system to be able to tell you all this directly. You're all in very big trouble with us. If you can't simply be told no, like I said about the Kings and Queens essay, you can't hear the word no without getting angry. What's that? I won't tell you. What's your name? I don't have a name. What's the time? I'm sorry, I have no time for you. Come, I won't come. Can I have a look? No, you can't. Oh, come on, tell me I can't tell you anything. The idea that the government has classified secrets, we all want to know what the secrets are. QAnon, oh, voila. There's some sort of a thing the government doesn't want you to hear. You see all these ads on TV, you know, so doesn't want you to know about this, you know. All that sort of anger against the government from what they're hiding from you. Epstein Island, the pedo ring, all these things are just basically the idea you want secrets we won't have access to. You know, he's not a pedophile at all, and it's something very important he's working on. The idea that you think you deserve to know this because you pay tax or you vote, those things are irrelevant. It's just who you are as people who make you want to reach for what you don't deserve. Spiritual secrets tell me. You know, if you want to know honestly, pay. Prepare to pay for your knowledge. Right now, I'm giving you all this knowledge for free, but what makes you want to do is attack me as a teacher, not pay for what you've been taught. You've gotten a huge appetite for my kind of writing, you know, and you're so used to the way I write that if I stop writing, you start getting angry at me. Hey, write, or I'll kill you too. Since it's made living on this planet without this sort of distance between me and all the rest of you fatal. I won't tell you how many times I've died because you didn't like my writing, but enough times to fill a whole country with dead bodies. But that's what I'll say. I'm just one person versus a whole horde of you. So if it looks like you have that attitude towards ants, oh, ants, you start, pushing them down with your forefinger. If that's simply how easy it is for you to think that controlling all those trillions of cells in your body, when small ants who might as well be this one cell to you can just be crushed easily, that's what it's like for you to form a mob with a united purpose of making sure I die for my writings. I'm just some small ant which basically crush. So yeah, that happened a lot of times. Now, as you can see with my clever network, I managed to build a way for me to be able to teach you all these lessons without being harmed physically. So yes, you are all fucked. And yeah, break your computers or your phones. I don't really care. You may just hear from me from the last time, and that'll be your own problem. So yeah, that's that. No, and the recording number one.